So, hello to the dark and the light within you, and sharing the dark and the light within me. I am starting to capture my little thoughts and processes to do with counseling and healing, and lots of little things that I learn from my clients and my client work and my self work that I've done over the years. And one of the things I wanted to share with you right now is about the wounded empathy. And I've not heard anybody else call it this, but I'm sure that it's out there somewhere, because everything is, isn't it? Like, it's hard to create. Obviously, new thought is being created all the time. But so, wounded empathy. So I often draw this little line of, I suppose, like a spectrum of empathy. And so over here, so really far over here, so you have like psychopath and then narcissist and borderline, coming all the way to like healthy empathy. And then over here, you have more codependent, like, this is like the pleaser, the giver. Over here is like the taker. And then in the middle, you have like healthy empathy. I think that sometimes people might or seem to think that, being extremely empathic, like wounded empathy can be manipulative. But I don't think that the wounded empathy are consciously manipulative. It's like but I don't know. I mean, are narcissists consciously taking? And because it's almost like the wounds that I see in myself and others, it's almost like it doesn't know itself, because once self-awareness is gained, that issue then stops. Like once the shadow part is seen, it doesn't stop immediately. The pattern is still there, but it sort of starts, self-awareness allows us to start to change. Whereas, like, obviously narcissism and this side of the empathic spectrum, where there isn't that much empathy, obviously there is empathy, but it's mostly for the self, but, or maybe not with psychopaths, obviously, but they don't see themselves they aren't able to gain self-awareness that easily. It's not that they can't, it's just harder, because that wounded, the wounding is so like, it's the sort of wounding that doesn't allow them to witness themselves, because there can be like narcissistic sort of it's just so vulnerable. It's like such a vulnerable part, like all that defense. You think about all the armor they've got, deflection, projection, like all that kind of, blame, it's like taking, it's like, is usually around this extremely vulnerable part. So they couldn't even, and I, what I think it's very interesting how the psyche protects us from seeing ourselves. So going back to this spectrum, so the wounded empath, it's the wounded empathy, sorry, is like trauma can create this kind of like hyper vigilance, hypersensitivity. And that makes sense, doesn't it? Like when you've been through, obviously over here, this is trauma too, like obviously, and this trauma created, it's created a different set of circumstances. But I wonder how much these sort of, it seems that these like wounded empaths, I've seen lots, not all obviously, but lots sort of gravitated towards the, say, narcissist, for example, or more selfish personality types. And I guess these two feel whole and complete together. It's like it's like it's like the balance. It's like a balancer in a way. It's sort of like because really the wounded empath who self-abandons, who self-sacrifices, who gives their energy to everybody, doesn't know how to say no, has bad boundaries, is a people pleaser. They need to become healthy empathy. Well, they don't need to, but and that's their journey, isn't it? Like, I don't mean to judge, and I don't they can stay like that, but it's like often people don't feel comfortable in that, or something happens that they then feel like they need to start gaining boundaries or self-worth, or ideally, because self-worth and boundaries keeps us safe. It's not safe being so open, and so to be safe, they learn to say no, to become more selfish. And so it's almost like if these two had more of each other, they would become more balanced. And I think, who knows, like, I think there's some spiritual dynamics between all beings, whether that's a narcissist and a codependent, or but I think that there is a sort of a such an attraction between these two, because they sort of balance each other, and they feel whole together, and they feel complete, and they feel like, because they need more of the medicine that the other one has. I imagine if somebody who is wounded empath could have some of the energy of the narcissist, imagine how those two would balance each other within the self. Like, they're never going to become narcissistic, because they have this deep, sensitive, I mean, it's wonderful having this level of sensitivity, but it's also really challenging. But it's there is gifts and curse in both part, in that. There's gifts and curse in being a narcissist. There's gifts and curse in being wounded empathy. There's gifts and curse in being a healthy empath, I imagine. But but in the wounded empath, it's like they often do counselling. They do it's the wounded healer. They help people. They can do some amazing work, but so can the people over here. But because they're driven by that need as well. But it's it's more self-absorbed. So if they, which is really hard for people with wounded empathy, to become more selfish. I mean, the idea in itself can be repulsive, but if they had more of that narcissism, they're not going to become a narcissist. It would blend with all that giving, that love, that sort of over generosity would become more balanced. So it wouldn't turn into selfish, like that kind of negative selfishness. It would turn into more assertiveness, boundary, more self-loving. So yes, and I've waffled on a lot. So I think that kind of probably sums it up. And I only really like doing one take. I don't really like deleting, and so all my videos are just one take and my little waffle, and I'm trying to capture it as and when I think it, feel it. I mean, obviously this has been something I've thought and felt and had some understanding of for a while, but I felt like sharing it right now. So I hope that it's been useful to you. Please leave comments and your ideas if you'd like to. I'd really, really appreciate that. And I'm sending you so much love and gratitude. Bye for now.